Okay. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to all of you. The meeting is called to order. Before proceeding to agenda item 4, I would like the Secretary of the Conference to make some announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to inform you that an evaluation questionnaire will be distributed to the desk of each delegation to seek your views on the relevance, effectiveness, and quality of the Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. We encourage each delegation to please take a few minutes to fill in the questionnaire to help us improve future meetings. We recommend completing the questionnaire at the end of the meeting today. However, if you must depart early, kindly complete the questionnaire prior to your departure. Please give your completed questionnaire to any of the Secretariat staff. Thank you in advance for your support in this.
I would now like to present my summary, which is being distributed to all delegations. I suppose all delegations have their copies. Please note that the chair's summary is the reflection of the chair regarding the deliberations of the meeting. Wherever possible, I have sought to reflect common positions. I have given due consideration to different opinions expressed and also sought to reflect all points for discussion. I have structured the summary along the 6 thematic areas, which were highlighted in a General Assembly Resolution 71/280 to facilitate the presentation of the stock-taking meeting in Mexico. In the deliberations of this meeting, the human rights of migrants and social inclusion, as well as diaspora contributions and remittances, were mainstreamed throughout most of the deliberations and well covered in this meeting. The summary also covers some general observations on international migration in the Asia-Pacific region and in the Global Compact. The Secretariat has informed me that it will take care of minor editorial corrections, such as grammatical and typographical errors, in subsequent editing of the final report. In view of this, and with time constraint that we face, distinguished delegates are requested to provide comments on the substance of the draft and to leave the editorial corrections to the Secretariat. The Secretariat will take note of the comments. I will give consideration to all the comments and will decide on how to reflect the comments in a revised report. In case of any major changes that will be suggested, I kindly request you to provide the written text to the Secretariat. I am now opening the floor for comments. Okay. I recognize the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Прежде чем мы перейдем к комментариям по докладу, мог ли бы я попросить ваших разъяснений и через вас разъяснений секретариата, имеется ли документ, который мы сейчас будем рассматривать, на всех 4 языках ESCAP. Я, к сожалению, не вижу его на официальной странице комиссии, website page. Может быть, я не сумел его найти, просил бы пояснить. Еще раз повторяю. Would you clarify? Имеется ли данный документ на всех 4 языках комиссии?
Thank you for your question, distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. The chairperson's summary is a working paper and it does not exist in all 4 languages of the Secretariat. The official report exists in all 4 languages. Thank you.
I recognize the distinguished delegate of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first congratulate you on this comprehensive document in such a short time. We will look forward to further improvement of this when it comes to its final shape, when it takes its final shape. And I would also like to appreciate the work of the Secretariat done in assisting you, Madam Chair, in this regard. We see in some areas there is a bit of, I think that there are some areas that has been reflected in a duplicated way that may be enhanced later, and some 2 or 3 areas missing. One I would like to mention in page 3, under discussions covered the 6 thematic areas of the consultation phase, where we would like to add in point E, no, sorry, not point E. Let me check. Point B. In point B, we would like to mention the portability of social securities. I think that was mentioned. And also about, I think also yesterday, in the, during the discussion on the international cooperation, it was discussed the area about how to look into the sort of custodian or governance of the whole global compact issue. And thirdly, we would like to include that in this regard there is UN agencies that are in charge of migration issues that needs to be included. And in that context, we would like to add 1 sentence at the end of the last paragraph of point C in page 5, which goes like, similarly, leveraging the entry of IOM into the UN system as the lead migration agency and fostering deeper and more effective UN system cooperation on migration at national, regional, and global levels as important to best support member state implementation of the Global Compact. We can send to you later the written form of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, the distinguished delegate from Bangladesh. We are looking forward to the submission of your comments. Are there any more states? I recognize this distinguished delegate from Nepal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also do appreciate for presenting this very nice report, which reflects most of the ideas we discussed in this House. And congratulations, Chair, for presenting us this good format of the summary from your part. Well, I don't have that many comments, but a few points which I would like to mention is, under general key issues on international migration and the Global Compact, while addressing the potential, please
Sorry,
also add.
what page are
Yeah, you see the page 1. While addressing the potential negative impacts, before negative impacts, also add pitfalls and negative impacts. Well, there might be some pitfalls as well. So it will be more comprehensive in addressing the issues that we have discussed. And another issue that I would like to mention is, on page 4, under international cooperation and governance of migration in all its dimensions, well, it has given the name of many institutions and organizations which are involved in international cooperation, which is really good, the ASEAN, etc., and all these regional processes have been mentioned. Colombo process, for example, Abu Dhabi dialogue. We are happy that they have all been mentioned. At the same time, we know that IOM is also a very important organization with a lot of expertise in the area of international migration, and it has also got a global reach that can make a difference in managing migration in the days to come. So I see it pertinent to mention the role of IOM as well. After the last paragraph, the economic and regional economic commissions of the United Nations has been mentioned. And after that, well, we could add one small sentence which I would just read out. Similarly, leveraging the entry of IOM into the UN system as the lead migration agency, and fostering deeper and more effective UN system cooperation on migration at national, regional, and global levels was underscored as important to best support member states' implementation of the Global Compact. So I would like to request the Secretariat to kindly reflect it so that, let's hear the views of other member countries also.
Your Excellency, can we ask for a copy of what you've read?
Yes, I will just jot it down in a piece of paper and give it to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much from the distinguished delegate of Nepal. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Cambodia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the government of Cambodia, we just would like to affirm that Cambodia support the Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for GCM's results of the consultation and hope that our concerns and initiatives will be considered in the meeting in New York, and a key point will be included in the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. I also would like to mention that the commit process, which is supported by UN Act to the 6 countries in the Great Mekong sub-region, also involved migration as well. For instance, in Som 12 in Myanmar, at the end of November 2017, the delegates of the 6 countries will adopt commit fair recruitment guidelines for migrant workers. As for the National Committee for Counter-Trafficking in Persons, which involve 21 ministries, will continue to put the results of the national consultation on the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration, and also the result of this meeting into the agenda and include it into the anti-trafficking strategic plan in next 5 years, 2018 and 2023. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, distinguished delegate from Cambodia. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Armenia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to congratulate Secretariat and personal to you for drafting very good document. I have 2 comments. First of all, in the morning I sent to the Secretariat some writing remarks, suggestion, but I couldn't find now here. about, the countries who most affected from, crises in some areas and who are not have common border with the crisis areas, and about having one sentence about that. This is first. And second, I want to also echo and support the suggestion from Bangladesh and Nepal to have one sentence about the role of IOM as well in the subparagraph C on the end. Thank you.
Your Excellency, we were able to receive your comment, but can you clarify, because regarding the number of displaced persons, since
I mean situation with regard Armenia, Syria. We received 22,000 Syrians, okay? And we are in the third among the countries by per capita receiving Syrians refugees. And we're trying to, solve their small and big problems. And international society, we think, should be taken also such countries. This is not necessary to have a notice about Armenia, who are not directly have border with this conflict zone, but they have effect. They have they're receiving many thousands of refugees, because the attention from international society is going to the neighboring countries. They are assisting them. With regard to the Syrian, they are assisting neighbor countries of Syria, but Armenia don't have. This is that such situation should be taken into consideration from international perspective. My suggestion about that.
Thank you very much for clarifying, Your Excellency. Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from Armenia. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Australia.
Thank you, Chair. We also support the proposal to add a reference on page 5 to the important role of the IOM in the implementation of the Global Compact. We would also like to ask the Chair to consider a few amendments in places where the document refers to representatives agreeing to certain positions as distinct from several representatives agreeing to certain positions, because in some cases there are things that are described as being a common position that are not wholly consistent with Australian government policy. So if the Chair could consider replacing certain references to representatives with references to several representatives, for example, we'd be very grateful, and we'd be happy to provide those suggestions to the Secretariat for consideration.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. If you could give us which paragraphs that you have some reservations to, we'd be happy to make the changes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, the distinguished delegate from Australia. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Tuvalu.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me just echo what has been also delivered by some of from the distinguished delegates around the room to congratulate you on this comprehensive summary of the meeting that we had in the past few days, which have captured most of the discussions that we had. Now, I want to make one comment on the page 6, and this is in reference to E, addressing the drivers of migration. Just looking at the language around, and especially although we do recognize the climate change as an adaptation strategy, there's, as part of the presentation that we made yesterday, that there should also be recognition given to the building resilience, so communities will not compelled to be forced to move. And as part of their comments, we will probably look into a suggested language that could embody or capture that issue and probably share with the Secretariat. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the distinguished delegate from Tuvalu. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Thailand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to congratulate you on this successful sharing of the meeting, and also thank you for the good working paper that we have before us right now. First of all, I would like to join in Bangladesh and Nepal to include the important role of IOM to the GCM process. Secondly, on page 4, on the issue of international cooperation and governance, I distinctly remember that during our country statement, we highlighted the issue of effective border control and management as one of the key areas that we can improve on amongst countries, which would not only reduce the risk of human trafficking and smuggling, but then also be a key facilitator for the regular migration between countries. So if you may consider, please also include this element into this issue, this agenda. On the second part is on page 6, on smuggling of migrants, trafficking in persons, and contemporary forms of slavery. On the third paragraph on the measures to respond trafficking, I think that one key and crucial element is also absent, and that is the cooperation with all stakeholders. And if this is also included, I think that it would add a lot to our statement here at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Thailand. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would also like to thanking you and congratulating you for drafting this chair summary, and we are pretty much happy with it, also by taking into account the inputs from other delegations. But perhaps the chair could consider the inclusion on page 4. Page 4 at the first paragraph at the top of the page, on the importance of travel documents to remain at the hands of the migrant workers. As we know, this is very much important because the possession of travel documents is basically the key for migrant workers to access other essential services such as health services, access to financial education, and also to consular protection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate of Indonesia. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for preparing the draft chair summary and as well as the draft report before us. Madam Chair, I have a procedure question. I mean, are we going through the drafting session now, or then if so, I mean, you should consider putting the text on the screen. Otherwise, not everyone can follow the specific proposal made by the delegation. So that's one question. And the second one observation is that I found that several languages like agreed in the text, throughout the text. My delegation is not comfortable with that, because this is the chair summary of the preparatory meeting, which is the regional input to the global process. I think usually the agreement, this kind of nature of language can be utilized after the intergovernmental process. I mean, this process is, of course, intergovernmental process that contribute to the global process. So maybe it is maybe a little bit premature to use agreement or agreed. Of course, we can replace the word like there was consensus, or there was general, generally shared view that something. I mean, or the meeting highlighted, or some delegation, some member agreed. I mean, that's is limited to certain delegation, that is more understandable. So I would suggest not using the agree at this point, because there's a different way to convey the similar spirit to the global process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The process is we're just going through the general comments at the moment, and later on we're going to go through page by page
Of the report.
of the chairman's report.
No, of the report of the meeting.
Sorry, of the report of the meeting. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, with respect to the point made by distinguished delegate of Japan, currently we are receiving comments on the chairperson's summary, and that, as you know, it is a summary presented by the chair and not a adopted document. But then after this, we will also go page by page, para by para on the screen of the report of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the distinguished delegate from Japan. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Во-первых, благодарю секретариат за разъяснение данные в отношении характера резюме председателя и пояснение то, что это является рабочим документом. Тем не менее, мы убеждены в том, что поскольку данный документ является вкладом в глобальное совещание, он должен быть переведен на все языки. Но на данном этапе мы не будем просить его перевода сегодня и здесь. Это первое, по процедуре. Второе, по существу самого документа. Данный документ представляет собой отражение понимания председателем хода дискуссии. Мы не можем согласиться с использованием в тексте юридического языка и использование терминологии вроде, я цитирую, «участники согласились». Мы настаиваем на том, что необходима редакционная доработка всего текста, и есть масса слов, которые могут использоваться. Emphasized, outlined, underscored, noted, it was observed. Но данный текст не является переговорным текстом, поэтому использование юридической терминологии недопустимо. Это первое. Второе. Есть некоторые вещи, которые для нас принципиально неприемлемые. В тексте нынешней версии они отражены именно с использованием терминологии «совещание согласилось». Я предлагаю посмотреть на вторую страницу, первый абзац вверху, первое предложение, which reads that meeting agreed that the global compact for safe, orderly and regular migration should be a forward-looking document which emphasizes the principle of shared responsibility. У нас есть большая проблема с признанием в данном контексте принципа разделения ответственности. Мы предлагаем либо вычеркнуть, или же использовать другой язык Например, я цитирую, which emphasizes common endeavor to deal with the migration issues in an integrated manner. Разумеется, госпожа председатель, это ваш документ. Это на ваше усмотрение. Но то, что я хотел бы подчеркнуть от имени своей делегации, это то, что в нашем заявлении мы абсолютно четко обозначили неприемлемость для нас отражения принципа разделенной ответственности. Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. Your Excellency, we would appreciate if you could give us a written statement and the written suggestions that you have just mentioned. Thank you. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from India.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. And thank you for successfully conducting this meeting and coming out with this document. I would like to point out in page 2, under the topic Importance of Migration for the Asia Pacific Region, in para 2, it says that it was observed that other causes of migration include conflict, human rights violation, natural disasters, and impacts of climate change. I would like to point out that in our national statement also, and we hold it firmly, that migration and refugees are two distinct phenomena which have different causes. Here, there is a distinct attempt to mix the two. These areas are basically human rights violations, conflict. They lead to the problem of refugees. And even if we consider in the field of migration, this is mixed migration. So first of all, I will suggest that if it has to be done, it has to be added as said as mixed migration rather than migration. That the other causes of mixed migration are such and so and so. Again, at the last, I would also like to add a line which says that, however, it also observed that the migration and refugee movements are distinct phenomena which are separate and which require separate set of compacts and solutions. So I would like this to be added in the spirit of the New York Declaration so that it becomes clear, and this is our national standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you very much from the distinguished delegate from India. Can you please furnish us with your statement? We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Iran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation just has the honor to inform Your Excellency the Secretariat and the distinguished delegations that Islamic Republic of Iran had the explanation of votes on the adoption of 2030 agenda on the SDGs, and it's valid in all other related UN documents. So my delegation asks Your Excellency to note these comments in Chair summary as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the distinguished delegate from Iran. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two specific comments. First one is regarding page 2, the second paragraph, which we're talking about here. The meeting recognized while states where the primary duty bearers on the protection of migrants, other stakeholders, were important partners in migration governance. I think here it's better to use were important contributors in migration governance instead of using the partners. So we are asking for change of these words. Besides, at page 6, the third paragraph, the meeting also noted that addressing the drivers of migration included poverty reduction through blah, blah, blah. I think this sentence have some problem. It's not clear. The driver of migration included poverty reduction. Poverty reduction is not a driver for migration. Poverty reduction, poverty itself is a driver for migration, I think. So I also think it's important, not only poverty, but also imbalanced development is one of the most important reasons for migration. So we would like to, addressing the drivers of migration included poverty and imbalanced developments through the pursuit of blah, blah, blah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the distinguished delegate from China. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to thank Secretariat for preparing this document, of course. And I would like to touch upon the wording in page number 5 under the item C, International Cooperation and Governance of Migration in all its dimensions. There is a wording of the need for financial assistance to support countries suffering climate-induced migration and countries facing large movements. So first of all, here I would like to suggest to remove the word financial assistance, because assistance is not always financial, and it's not always financial that the countries ask for. And assistance could be in many ways. For example, when it comes to displacement issue, it is support to countries in terms of returning of these people to their place of origin. So I would suggest to replace this or to change the wording to the need for support to countries. That would. There's another slight suggestion from me, again, to this sentence. It regards the second part of this sentence. It is, I mentioned it in our country statement, that I would like just to clarify that large movements induced by conflicts and to add that large movements and internal displacements induced by conflicts was evoked. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Nauru.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on preparing a comprehensive document. If anything, I'll take your attention to page 6. Under the heading of E, the last stanza, which deals with small island developing states. This we feel should be expanded upon, because I echo the sentiments of the Tuvaluan delegation, but we spoke of specificity in terms of allowing for this process to be holistic and ensuring that the Pacific voice is heard, which requires more consultation and more engagement. So I welcome any suggestions as to wording to reflect that in this very brief summary of the issue that faces the Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Nauru. We recognize the distinguished delegate from Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your generosity. I apologize for coming back for the second time. I just would like to support the proposal made by India with regard to mixed migration, and with the point made by China with regard to the use of contributor. In this paragraph, which is, let me just check. Yeah, it's the, I think, second paragraph of page 2. Also in the same line, I think that when we talk about a spirit of renewed multilateralism, that gives a vague impression of, and it's a question of interpretation as well. So in that regard, we would like to suggest deletion of that part of this sentence, which is the spirit of renewed multilateralism, But in order to give more clarity, add after the important contributors in the discussion and implementation of migration governance, and stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much from the distinguished delegate from Bangladesh. We now recognize a distinguished delegate from Fiji.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just dropped my nameplate. Thank you for this comprehensive document. We support the proposals made by our fellow Pacific Islanders, Tuvalu and Nauru. In addition, we would just, we have 3 comments. We'd like to see stronger language in relation to climate change as a driver of migration and the input and the impact of this on human rights on individuals and communities in the Pacific. Further to that, we would also propose language in relation to the right to development, noting that there is a nexus between development, climate resilience and climate migration, and also reference to gender equality and equity, noting that women and girls are at a higher risk of human rights abuse during this process. And finally, we also propose some language around the right to access and the enjoyment of cultural heritage of communities identified as being at risk of climate displacement. And we're happy to provide text to that effect.
Okay, thank you so much from this distinguished delegate from Fiji. We recognize again the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Я прошу прощения, что в своем предыдущем комментарии я, к сожалению, упустил еще один момент, на который мы хотели бы обратить внимание. Поскольку он также сформулирован таким образом, что относит этот тезис к всем участникам встречи. Речь, в частности, о 2-м параграфе на 2-й странице, который звучит сейчас следующим образом. Representatives called for the Global Compact to set up a review and monitoring mechanism. У нас большие сомнения в принципиальной необходимости разработки такого механизма, но это еще тема для дальнейшего обсуждения на глобальном уровне и далее в рамках переговорного процесса. На данном этапе мы бы предложили либо вычеркнуть этот параграф, поскольку для нас, по крайней мере, он точно неприемлем, или перефразировать данный параграф и изложить его следующим образом. Several representatives noted the need for the Global Compact to set up a review and monitoring mechanism. Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from Russian Federation. We would like to request Her Excellency to please provide us with your comments and your proposed changes. Thank you very much. Are there any more countries? We now recognize the distinguished delegate from UNICEF.
Thank you very much for an excellent summary of a very rich and very fruitful 3-day discussion. I would like to highlight some of the issues that we have seen in the report that have well reflected issues that concern children in particular. I'd like to highlight and thank you for summarizing the importance of recognizing the rights of all migrants, regardless of status. I'm also particularly pleased that the access to healthcare is particularly mentioned, and the broader needs to ensure access to services, which many delegates had emphasized in their interventions. There is also recognition of the access to birth certificates and its importance, and that's very welcome. The mention of firewalls and the need for regularization pathways is very important, and I think it's well reflected in the text, and the need to counter discrimination and to expand regular pathways and find ways for humane returns are very welcome and reflect the discussions. I would also note with, that the children-specific issues are recognized as children are being mentioned as a vulnerable group. So thank you very much that these issues that are so important are all reflected. I would like to highlight maybe a few areas that could be added and integrated in the text because they have been mentioned by delegates in their interventions, they have been referred to in some of the best practice examples and experiences that states have shared, and these are the following. There has been a lot of discussion on the access to education, and perhaps on page 3 at the bottom this could be highlighted alongside with the access to health. In the reference to the needs to expand pathways on page 4, the issue of family unification may merit further mention. When we are talking about, and there are several references to this, but in particular on page 4, the need for strengthened inter-country and inter-regional cooperation, I remember there were many mentions also on the need for more inter-country cooperation, specifically on issues that relate to child protection. Equally, when there is recognition of the drivers of migration, there was some discussion on some of the child-specific drivers. So on page 6, there's mention of different drivers for men and women. Perhaps also child-specific drivers could be recognized, such as violence in the home, and also statelessness, which is both a driver and a root cause in some cases for children to be forced to move and to move. And maybe last, I think an important additional emphasis is that there has been a lot of very interesting discussion with a lot of examples of states investing in alternatives to detention, so reflecting the issue of immigration detention, in particular how it pertains to children, would be very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the distinguished delegate from UNICEF. There is a card that's being raised, Your Excellency, but I couldn't read it. I'm recognizing you. I'm sorry.
My name is Lakshman Basnet. I'm from Nepal, and I would just like to thank you for your hard work for this report. And in paragraph, page number 2, there are mentions of recognition and addressing a specific vulnerability of women migrant, including domestic workers in particular, and in many places, again on page number 4, paragraph B, the decent work agenda is there. Thank you for all this, and taking consideration as state sovereignty, labor market needs the protection of migrant rights. For this, I would like to request you to put, for this we need expertise of UN specialized agency of ILO's engagement. It should be written somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from Nepal. We recognize the distinguished delegate from ILO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for excellent summary. Madam Chair, as the purpose of this intergovernmental meeting, as we understand, was a stock-taking exercise. So the reality of the stock-taking, if one looks at the deliberations and roundtables of the past 2 days and the actual work that is going on, in fact, there's a big role played by UN specialized agencies like the ILO. So as it's a stock-taking exercise, and as that work, I think, will continue in the future as well through support of the ASEAN framework, through the support of national priorities, I think it is good to integrate in section C in the last paragraph where it's use of existing regional intergovernmental processes, etc., including through the regional economic commissions of the United Nations, and as has been suggested by a number of delegates, the IOM, and mention here should also be made of UN specialized agencies like the ILO, which in fact is already doing a lot of work and will continue to do so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the distinguished delegate from ILO. In the interest of time, we have time for the last 3 interventions. For those who will not be called, please send us your written comments so that we can incorporate them. In this particular order, the distinguished delegate from UNHCR, the distinguished delegate from ICRC, and the distinguished delegate from Cambodia. May we call on the distinguished delegate from UNHCR.
Thank you very much. Our intervention is very simple. We'd like to associate ourselves to UNICEF's comments in all particulars. Additionally, on page 2 of the draft text, the first full paragraph, the last line, the meeting agreed that the Global Compact should aim to promote win-win outcomes for all stakeholders through practical and realistic measures. I noted that Ms. Arbour and at least one other speaker in this conference referred to win-win-win situation, since it's a triple win. It's a win for the migrant, it's a win for the state of origin, and a win for the state of destination or the host state. So I would just suggest changing win-win to win-win-win. It's also less prosaic. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. The distinguished delegate from UNHCR. We call on the distinguished delegate from ICRC.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for this document. At the risk of repeating earlier comments, we'd also like to join ourselves to UNICEF's comment, particular on immigration detention, noting that it was also discussed that this should be used rather as a matter of last resort. And further on, noting the need to address the humanitarian concerns, including of or consequences as well of migrants going missing, and including the consequences on families of these migrants. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from ICRC. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from Cambodia.
Thank you again, Madam. And I just would like to highlight on the page 5, paragraph 2. And we remember at the discussion, we just would like to highlight the cooperation between the government, civil society organization, not only employer, but also private sector, because it's not only the employer of the migrant workers, but also we mobilize the involvement of the bank association as well. And so we would like to add the word private sector. And also the collaboration is not only among the civil society organization and trade union, but also with the government as well. Thank you.
We thank the distinguished delegate from Cambodia. We now recognize the distinguished delegate from IOM. And the last is the distinguished delegate from FAO. In the interest of time, please make your comments concise, because we still have another session right after this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and indeed I will be very brief. Just 3 quick points that I would suggest for consideration. One is in the section on irregular migration and regular pathways. I note that many governments talked about cooperation between countries of origin and destination, specifically in managing the labor migration process, and that would be useful to stress in that point. Second point is the link between labor migration and trafficking and smuggling, that several made the point yesterday about needing to see these issues as related to one another, and I would hope that there could be some cross-reference. And my final point is just to thank the many delegations that recognize the role of IOM and express our deep appreciation to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from IOM. We now recognize our last intervention, the distinguished delegate from FAO.
Thank you so much for Madam Chair. I also would like to articulate about the role of specialized agency. So especially focusing about the section C. As you know, FAO also working about root cause of migration, and same as other UN agencies. So I'd like to expand it to this kind of cooperation mechanism, not only to the mentioned about ESCAP, to be more UN kind of the UN system, and also specialized agency. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to the distinguished delegate from FAO. I'd like to thank all the interventions. I will consider your comments and see how they can be reflected in the report. I have now heard your comments and the Secretariat has noted them. Please give us a copy of your proposed statements. A revised statement will be circulated after the meeting. It will be attached to the final report of the meeting and submitted to the stock-taking meeting in Mexico. Okay, now. Okay. Okay. We now go to agenda item 5. Consideration of the report of the meeting. As mentioned, we recognize Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. По вопросу ведения. Conduct of business. Будьте добры, поясните, пожалуйста, как следует понимать ваше указание на то, что резюме председателя будет распространено после данной встречи. Вы имеете в виду встречу здесь, сегодня, сейчас? Или вы имеете в виду распространение документа уже затем, после завершения всей встречи? Мы бы хотели четко понять, будет ли у делегаций возможность увидеть переработанный проект заключения председателя, прежде чем мы закончим всю встречу и примем доклад по итогам встречи. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In respect to the point made by Honorable Distinguished Delegate of Russian Federation, I think there are two distinct documents. One is Chairperson's Summary, which is a document prepared by our Honorable Chair and submitted as a reflection of the discussions at the meeting. We have as the chair pointed out, we have listened to all different comments and suggestions. Secretariat will work with the chair to revise this chairperson summary draft, which was circulated to all of you, and we will send it across to all member states after the meeting. Because this is not an adopted document. The adopted document is the report, which is now coming for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю секретариат за пояснение. И мне очень не хочется затягивать дискуссию, поверьте. Believe me. В том докладе, который сейчас содержится в документе L2, в первом параграфе совершенно четко сказано во второй строчке, что meeting decides to submit the present report. Поэтому нам надо с вами понять и определиться, когда мы будем принимать доклад по итогам встречи. Решение в отношении какого резюме председателя мы принимаем. Спасибо.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The distinguished delegate of Russian Federation, I think what we are going to adopt is this document, which is the report of the meeting. And if we can go over it and see if it meets your expectations. And about the chair summary, this is a separate, distinct document which will be revised in the light of all the comments which have been made, and Secretariat will work with the chairperson. And once the revised document is there, in next few days, we will circulate it around to all of you.
Can we recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My delegation is wondered under which agenda item we are in. I mean, are we under the agenda item 4 or 5?
We are on agenda 5 now.
So it means the consideration of the chair summaries is done?
Because there are no more interventions, Your Excellency, so we have to incorporate all the comments and we'll try to put everything together. But of course, the chairman's summary is not for adoption because it's the chair summary, but what has to be adopted is the report. It's the second document.
If I may, I mean, you take the floor. I mean, if you want to proceed in the way you described, you have to specifically indicate the process forward. For example, at what point are we going to receive the revised text? At what time are we going to submit a deadline, I mean, before certain deadlines, and what will be the coordination mechanism afterwards? Because most of all the delegates are going back to their home country, and there's no, I mean, opportunity to have this kind of broad-based discussion. So that would put the work of the chairperson a difficult one. So I just wonder, I mean, whether this is the best way forward, or if the time constraint and all the other constraints are taken into account, and that is the only way forward. Maybe still you need to clearly indicate the way forward. Otherwise, we are kind of lost. And also the committee is make use of the interpretation until I think 5 o'clock. So I just wonder, I mean, how you want to proceed with it. I mean, I was expecting to go through the text, and if not, we are happy to submit additional comment in writing within days you indicate. But in the end, procedure in your hand. But we need full clarity on the way forward. Thank you.
We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think we can be adequately guided, but by what the Secretariat just said, the Chairman's text will be circulated in a few days after it has incorporated whatever additions or amendments you wish to give. So I would suggest to all delegates that if they have such comments, they submit it, so that we can proceed to the adopted document under agenda item 5, for which we have only limited time. So, I suggest we follow what the Secretariat gave us, which is pretty well-established international practice, then we move to the adopted document. Thank you.
Thank you to the distinguished delegate from the Philippines. We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Я бы хотел согласиться с тем, что сказал представитель делегации Японии. Нам нужны четкие указания от вас и от секретариата в отношении порядка действий. Я бы хотел напомнить, что мои комментарии были сделаны по пункту повестки дня 4. И я четко обозначил свою просьбу, что прежде чем мы перейдем к пункту 5, я бы хотел сделать комментарий по пункту 4. В этой связи я уже начинаю теряться, на каком пункте повестки дня мы сейчас с вами находимся. Это первое. Второе. Мы готовы будем перейти к рассмотрению пункту 5, разумеется. Но я бы хотел отметить, что установленная практика, на которую только что ссылались некоторые делегации, имеет определенный порядок и соблюдение правил процедуры. С учетом фактора времени мы готовы, естественно, работать с коллегами конструктивно, но мы не готовы принимать к сведению фактор времени как элемент, оправдывающий ненадлежащую работу. Благодарю вас.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, in respect to the points made by honorable and distinguished delegates of Japan and Russian Federation, I think we can clarify that we can set a time frame for receiving comments of I think within this week, which is Thursday and Friday. So close of business on Friday, if we receive some comments, suggestions, then Secretariat will work with our distinguished chairperson and revise this chair's summary to the best extent possible, taking into account your comments and suggestions. And before the end of next week, thank you.
If there are no more interventions, we will proceed to agenda item 5. To our colleague from His Excellency from the Russian Federation, we will welcome other comments or interventions on agenda item 4 if you just give it to us on or before the end of the closing time of this Friday, and we will duly consider it. Agenda item 5 is the consideration of the report of the meeting. As mentioned, the chair's summary will be attached to the report. Minor editorial corrections such as grammatical and typographical errors will be taken care of in the subsequent editing of the final report. I suggest that we go through the report page by page. Can we get it on the screen? We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Прежде чем мы перейдем к рассмотрению доклада по параграфам, как вы предложили. Я, к сожалению, не услышал предложение рассмотреть общие вопросы, касающиеся доклада. У меня есть один вопрос, который касается доклада в целом. Он того же свойства, он связан с переводом на языки. Могли бы вы, секретариат, пояснить, является ли данный документ официальным языком комиссии? И если так, то где переводы на все 4 языка? Благодарю.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the clarification on the languages versions, I think the draft report under Agenda 5 is available in all the 4 languages. My colleague had just gone to check where it is, whether it is posted. And about the chair summary, once it is finalized after the revisions, we will try to get it translated as well. Thank you. I understand that translations, translated copies have been printed and they are outside the room. So I hope delegates can pick them up. Thank you.
Going back to the draft report, are there any comments for page 1? I recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under section Roman 1, this report is submitted to the, at the end of the paragraph 1, it's indicated that this report is going to, and chair summary is going to be submitted to the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific at this 74th session. I just wonder why it is needed. I mean, this goes to the global process in New York and moving on to the other meeting processes. And so I just wonder whether this part of the para 1 is needed. My delegation would like to call for deletion of it, unless you convince otherwise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think about this point, whether it should be submitted to the ESCAP 74th Commission session, is really actually about the member states. And because this is a proceedings of an intergovernmental meeting, and the normal expectation is that outcomes of all intergovernmental meetings are presented to our highest decision-making body, which is the Commission. So that is in that spirit we have put, but it's really up to you whether you would like to receive it at the Commission or not. Thank you.
We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Во-первых, я хотел бы поблагодарить секретариат за пояснение в отношении перевода на языки. На веб-странице ESCAP это не было отражено, и поэтому я вынужден был поднять этот вопрос. Было бы полезно, чтобы секретариат оперативно помещал на веб-страницу перевода документов. Это первое. Второе. Что касается римской цифры 1, параграфа 1. Вторая строчка. С нашей стороны мы хотели бы предложить изменить текст следующим образом. Decide to submit the present report, so we would suggest actually delete present, and the text would read decides to submit the report, and the chair's summary as revised, taken into account comments made by delegations on the draft chair's summary. I read it again. Delete present in the second line, and the text reads decides to submit the report, because if we leave present, that might be attributed to the chair's summary. It is ambiguous. So delete present, the text reads decides to submit the report and the chair's summary as revised, taking into account comments made by delegations on the draft chair's summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments of the distinguished delegate of the Russian Federation. Are there any more interventions from states? We recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you. I think my delegation needs to propose the deletion of the last part of the paragraph 1, because we don't see any added value to send this report and chair summary in the ESCAP session next May. And by the time, things are, this report may be overtaken by event. So I don't see any added value to bring it to the attention of the Commission. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, if we understood correctly that we delete the reference to submission of this report to ESCAP Commission, is that the spirit of Japan's suggestion?
Yes, if I may, the paragraph 1 ends after the December 2017, and delete the rest. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I understand from my colleague from the Commission that all the reports and outcome documents of the meetings conducted by or convened by the Commission go to the Commission, even if they are overtaken by events. So it's just a procedural matter, and so following that procedure, I am advised that this should be submitted to the 74th Commission session. Thank you.
Are there any more interventions or comments for page 1 from any of the delegations? So, item 6. Okay, okay. Okay, since there are no, if there are no further comments, we have before us on page 1, with the amendment in paragraph 1, proposed by the distinguished delegates from the Russian Federation and Japan. Is there a consensus on the amendments? We recognize this is the distinguished delegate from China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that our distinguished colleague from Japan mentioned to delete, while the Secretariat has explained the reason to maintain it. So that's my understanding, because I think I see the logic as explained by our distinguished colleague from Secretariat. Since this is a conference, intergovernmental process convened by the Commission, and also it is related to the social development as well as economic sides. So it's quite relevant to our activity of the Commission. So I understand submitting it to the 74th Commission session is reasonable. So I don't know what do you mean. What do you mean? You mentioned about each view we West according to the two suggestions. What do you mean?
Thank you very much from the distinguished delegate from China. We recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you. Perhaps the way forward would be to replace the heading of the Roman 1 with the matters brought to the attention of the committee, called the Commission. So replace the heading of Roman 1 with the subheading and delete subheading. Do you know what I mean? I mean, in place of the matter calling for action by the Commission or brought to its attention, we put matter brought to the attention of the Commission. Thank you. And delete the subheading. Thank you.
Are there any more interventions? Since we are in agreement that we are submitting this report, we have amendments from the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation and the distinguished delegate from Japan. Is there a consensus now on the amendments? I see no objection. I declare page 1 as amended by the distinguished delegates from Russian Federation and Japan adopted by the meeting. Okay, page 2. We invite your attention to the page 2 of the report. Are there any comments or interventions or amendments from any of the delegations? Are there no comments? We recognize the distinguished delegate from Iran. Thereafter, the distinguished delegate from ICRC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. Our state presentation was, represented in the para 25, while the other representative, the speeches has been represented in para 6. So, and I'm gonna to have an explanation of both. So, shall I put it here in para 6 while there is no name of Iran here, or I have to put it in 25? I mean, if it's possible, because it was our, governmental statement, if it's possible to put Iran's name on para 6 as well, then I can have my reservation explained here. Or otherwise I can do it in the para 25 of the Secretariat. Thank you.
Actually, this is a factual report, distinguished delegate of Iran. So we have put the names of the countries as per the session you spoke. So since you spoke in the later session, it has been reflected there. Thank you.
We recognize the distinguished delegate from ICRC.
Thank you very much. Just to clarify on point 9, where it is mentioned that the representative of last part of the last sentence, an International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, maybe to clarify, this statement was made on behalf of the international movement of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. So to add that in that part of the sentence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the distinguished delegate from ICRC. Are there any more interventions, comments, or amendments? Since there are none, we have before us page 2 with the amendment in paragraph 9 from the distinguished delegate from ICRC. Is there a consensus on this amendment? I see no objection. I declare page 2 as amended by the distinguished delegate from ICRC adopted by the meeting. We ask the excellencies and the distinguished delegates to please turn their attention to page 3 of the report. Are there any comments, interventions, or amendments? Since there are no comments or interventions, we have before us page 3 of the report. I declare page 3 as without any amendments adopted by the meeting. I invite your attention to page 4 of the report. We recognize the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Chair. Just to kick up with amendments made to paragraph 1, in item C, paragraph 27, I would suggest to change the wording of the second sentence in this paragraph like this: after consideration and revision, comma, based on comments by country representatives, comma again, it was agreed that the summary reflected the discussions held during the regional preparatory meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. Are there any more amendments? Seeing none, we have before us, we recognize the distinguished delegate from IOM.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a question, actually, and it goes to the role of the Special Representative of the Secretary General and the Director General of IOM in the opening session. I see that that is referred to on page 4 under paragraph 3A, but it is not referred to at the opening of the regional preparatory meeting, and I apologize because I know you have excuse me, already adopted page 1, but I wonder whether that ought not to be reflected at that point. And since this will probably be the last time, excuse me, that I'm taking the floor, I just want to thank very much our partners, ESCAP, in collaboration in organizing this meeting, and to all of you. So if it's just a question for clarification about whether the SRSG and the Director General of IOM, together with the Executive Secretary, should be reflected not just on page 4, but in the beginning part. And I thank you once again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you, very distinguished colleague from IOM. Actually, the opening session is not technically part of the intergovernmental meeting, which begins after the election of the chair. And so the statements made in the opening session are reflected in the organization, but not in the proceedings. So just a technical procedural matter, but of course the statements made by both our distinguished speakers, the Director General of IOM and the SRSG, have been very important contributions to this meeting. Thank you.
Are there any more amendments? Seeing none, we have before us page 4 with the amendment in paragraph 27 proposed by the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. Is there a consensus on this amendment? I recognize the distinguished delegate from Russian Federation to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Iran.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Я должен сознаться, что я пропустил предложение уважаемого делегата Азербайджана. Поскольку мы рассматривали, предполагалось, предыдущую страницу. Сейчас мы на странице 4. С вашего позволения, можно было бы вновь озвучить предложение, которое предполагается к внесению в параграф 27. Спасибо.
May we ask the secretary to read the amendment?
The amended paragraph would be: the chair presented her summary, E/ESCAP GCM/PrEP/WP1, after consideration, and now the amendment and revision, based on comments by country representatives. Countries agreed that it reflected the discussions held during the regional preparatory meeting.
Sorry for interrupting. Can I read that out?
Sorry.
Can I read
We recognize the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan.
Yeah, sorry for intervention. So, after consideration and revision, based on comments by country representatives, just the issue of language, it was agreed that the summary reflected the discussions. That's just don't repeat the country representative twice.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. The distinguished delegate from Russian Federation is once again recognized.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. Как я уже говорил, нам бы хотелось уйти от языка, который носит юридический характер. Поэтому мы понимаем то предложение, которое сделал уважаемый представитель Армении. Это Армения? Азербайджан, я оговорился, извините, пожалуйста, Азербайджана. Но это предложение идет несколько дальше, чем мы считаем юридически приемлемым. У нас есть другая версия для параграфа 27, или мы могли бы с уважаемым коллегой из делегации Азербайджана переговорить быстро и предложить формулировку, которая, как нам кажется, могла бы быть приемлема для всех. По крайней мере, мы на это надеемся. В нынешнем виде предложенная поправка для нас неприемлема. Спасибо.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. We recognize the distinguished delegate from Iran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, my point would be on the section part D, and it comes back to part C, so that's why I asked you to read my notes here. Islamic Republic of Iran delegation to Asia Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration has a reservation on the adoption of this report, and that would be like Islamic Republic of Iran, believing on the importance of international action towards global migration issues and with good faith has been proven through its supportive and humanitarian measures done on the refugees issue entered in its territory on the basis of its commitment to the international law in the last decades, hereby remembering its commitment to the Convention relating to the status of refugees known as the 1951 Refugee Convention and its 1967 protocol, and reminding the speech delivered by its delegation to the UN Summit for Refugees and Migrants 2016 in New York, keeps this opportunity to state that while receiving little contribution from UN-related bodies, despite the presence of huge mass of refugees and displaced people in Iran territory, and the expenses such as healthcare, medical, educational, and food costs of them, no more burden regarding any new commitment on the migration-related issues can be accepted. The delegation of Islamic Republic of Iran asked the chair and also the secretary to put this reservation to the draft report of the meeting, and furthermore, my delegation would like to humbly ask the distinguished chair to reflect this reservation in chair's summary as well. Thank you. I mean, the whole text has been submitted to the secretary before.
Thank you very much to the Islamic Republic of Iran. We have before us page 4 with the amendment in paragraph, with the, I'm sorry. Okay. Since we have not agreed with the paragraph 27 amendment, we will proceed first to page 5 of the draft report until we wait for the consolidated amendment of the distinguished delegates from Azerbaijan and a distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation. Can we proceed first to page 5? Are there comments on page 5? If there are none, I declare page 5 adopted by the meeting. I invite the body to look at page 6 of the report. Are there any comments on page 6? Seeing none, I declare that we adopt page 6. We are inviting everyone to look at page 7 of the report. Are there any comments on page 7? Seeing there are no comments on page 7, I hereby declare the adoption of page 7 of the report of the meeting. Even the annex. I invite the body to please look at page 8. Are there any comments or amendments to page 8 of the report? There being no amendments or comments to page 8 of the report, I declare that page 8 of the report is adopted by the meeting. We recognize the distinguished delegate from Iran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to humbly ask our reservation would be listed on the documents as well. So if you put it somewhere in the general series of working papers, up to you. Our reservation note should be listed in page 8 as well. Thank you.
We have a proposal from we recognize the distinguished delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Usually, the annex contains information on the official documents made available for the meeting. So it is unusual to put the country statement or country paper in the list. If the intention is to emphasize the reservation to the report or itself, that needs to be reflected as under Part 28. I mean, it now reads the regional preparatory meeting adopted the present report on 8 November. The one delegation or delegation of Islamic Republic of Iran made a statement, or before or after, I don't know, to express his reservation on certain issue. I mean, this is the reflective of the proceedings of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the intervention of the distinguished delegate of Japan. We recognize the distinguished delegate from the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Thank you. Thank you to my colleague from Japan delegation. As I read, the reservation was done before the adoption of the report, so that's why I would like to, I mean, if it be adopted by this reservation and by this explanation of work. So that's my humble ask, that our reservation note should and must be, I mean, listed in the list of documents in the annex page. Thank you.
May we ask the opinion of the Secretariat?
Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think the distinguished delegate of Iran, your suggestion is well noted, and we will incorporate the change in para 28. But as the distinguished delegate of Japan has suggested, that the documents that are listed in the annex are all official documents of the meeting, and it doesn't include the country statements or reservations made by specific countries. So, but this reservation will be reflected in para 28. I think that should be adequate. Thank you.
Are the amendments of Russian Federation and Azerbaijan ready? Who do I recognize? I'm sorry. Do we recognize the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation?
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. И прежде всего я хотел бы поблагодарить моего уважаемого коллегу из делегации Азербайджана, проявленное к тем подходам, которые мы здесь продвигаем. По итогам наших коротких консультаций я имею честь с согласия уважаемого представителя Азербайджана предложить нашу совместную поправку к пункту 27. Она состоит в следующем. Первое предложение остается таким, какое оно есть. Второе предложение вычеркиваем и заменяется следующим предложением. Зачитываю на английском языке. Representatives considered the chair's summary and made comments on the text, full stop. I read it again. Representatives considered the chair's summary and made comments on the text, full stop. Спасибо.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation and the distinguished delegate of Azerbaijan. We have before us page 4. We're returning to page 4 with the joint amendment of the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation and the distinguished delegate from Azerbaijan. In paragraph 27, is there a consensus on this amendment? I see no objection. I declare page 4 as amended by the distinguished delegates from the Russian Federation and Azerbaijan adopted by the meeting. As we have reviewed all sections of the report, I propose that the draft report be adopted with editorial changes to be taken care of by the Secretariat. Are we all in agreement on this point? Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as I see nods of agreement and hear no views to the contrary, I declare this report adopted by acclamation. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as I see nods of agreement and hear no views to the contrary, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we are now on our final agenda, item 6 of our agenda, the closure of the Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. I will now call upon ESCAP Deputy Executive Secretary, Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, to deliver his closing remarks. You recognize a distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, госпожа председатель. И я предлагаю сотрудникам секретариата наблюдать за залом, с тем, чтобы нам не приходилось стучать, я сказал, so that we should not need any knocking on the table. Мне хотелось бы получить четкое прояснение, прежде чем мы закроем совещание. Нам бы хотелось услышать четкую дату, которая упоминалась в предварительном плане. Tentatively, я сказал, предварительно. В отношении даты, когда будет выпущена пересмотренная версия заключения председателя. Спасибо.
May we ask the Secretariat to give the date of the summary?
I think, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, the distinguished delegate of Russian Federation. I think I clarified that we put the deadline of Friday COB this week for receiving the comments, written comments from any distinguished delegates, and the next Friday, 17th November, for circulating the revised version of the chair summary to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now recognize ESCAP Deputy Executive Secretary, Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, to deliver his closing remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking around the room with trepidation to make sure there's nobody asking the floor. I realize that I'm coming at the end of long and exhausting conversations and discussions, so I will be as brief as I can. Distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of what has been an extremely productive Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for safe, orderly and regular migration, allow me to offer a few final words on behalf of ESCAP and our Executive Secretary. First and foremost, I would like to thank you, Chair, Your Excellency, Ms. Sarah Lou Ariola, Under Secretary for Migrant Workers Affairs of the Philippines, for being our able and dedicated chairperson of this meeting. It falls now on your shoulders to take the messages of our vast region forward to the global stock-taking meeting that will take place in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico in early December and further into the negotiation process for the compact. And we are very grateful to you for taking that on. I would also like to thank, on behalf of all of us, the vice chairs of this meeting, His Excellency Mr. Abdul Latif Mohammed, Minister of State for Economic Development, Republic of Maldives, His Excellency Mr. Shahidul Haq, Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, and Mr. Gajik Yeganyan, Head of State Migration Service of Armenia. Excellencies, all of you represent the passion, the diversity of this region and will be our champions for many of the issues that we hope reflected in the compact. Ms. Louise Arbour, Special Representative of the Secretary General for International Migration, we're also grateful to her for having joined us for this meeting. We're confident that many of the issues discussed, the Asia-Pacific flavors, as it were, will make their way into the Secretary General's report on migration that the Special Representative is leading. And last but by no means least, we wanted to thank His Excellency Mr. Juan Jose Camacho, who already had to rush to the airport, the distinguished permanent representative of Mexico to the United Nations in New York, and of course the co-facilitator of the Global Compact. We thank him for accompanying us, for listening to our region's voices, our region's concerns, and we count on him to ensure that the Asia-Pacific peace finds its place at the heart of the migration puzzle that he and the co-facilitator are putting together. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 days, you have successfully developed the Asia-Pacific input to the process for the Global Compact for safe, orderly, and regular migration. Thanks to your inputs, thanks to your statements, thanks to the experiences that you've brought to us from your countries, from the region, and of course the insights that have been provided to us by our distinguished panelists, we have been able to learn quite a lot about the nature of migration in our region. Let me just touch on a very few highlights of the messages that you have conveyed. First, at a time of growing skepticism, you have emphasized migrants as agents of sustainable development, bringing positive benefits to both countries of origin and destination, but often facing human rights abuses, limited access to social protection, and not always covered by labor laws, etc. You would like the Global Compact to be a forward-looking compact, a forward-looking document centered around the fundamental human rights of migrants, regardless of status. You have told us that it should emphasize shared responsibilities in managing migration, including actionable commitments and mechanisms for follow-up and review. You have shared with us your desire for it to focus on policy coherence and whole of government, whole of society, and indeed whole of UN approaches to all dimensions of migration throughout the cycle, from pre-departure all the way to return. And you've recognized the contribution of civil society, the private sector, trade unions, and indeed UN agencies, including ourselves, the regional commissions, among other stakeholders, in helping shape and implement the Global Compact. And finally, you've highlighted the importance of cooperation between countries of origin and destination to regulate and facilitate labor migration for mutually beneficial ends. In a way, you've proven that our region provides many good practices to draw upon on migration. We have sub-regional entities, the Eurasian Economic Union, the South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation, ASEAN. We have processes like the Dubai Dialogue, Almaty Process, the Bali Process, the Colombo Process, and the Pacific Immigration Directors Conference, all guiding and helping shape and give flavor to the good practices that exist. Your deliberations have shown how far we have already come as a region in terms of ensuring that migration processes are safe, they are orderly, and they are regular. But your dialogue has also served as a reminder on how far we still have to go to reach many of your own goals and many of your own aspirations. Too many migrants, you have told us, are still impelled to move due to circumstances beyond their control. Too many face dangerous journeys, risking their lives to migrate. And too many are forced to live and work in the shadows at their destinations, vulnerable and exploited. They are not allowed to realize, indeed, their full potential as agents of sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the summary that our Honourable Chair has produced, along with the other documentation from the meeting and the revisions that you have just discussed, will feed directly into the global process for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, first in Mexico and then in the discussions to take place next year. So your voice, your opinions have been captured and will be heard as the process evolves. I wanted to assure you that ESCAP and the Secretariat will be with you every step of the way, doing what we can to ensure that the Asia-Pacific regional perspectives are well heard and well understood. Going forward into the implementation of the Global Compact, we are also ready to assist you in the implementation of the Compact and its regional follow-up and review in cooperation with our sister UN agencies. We will continue to offer our services to help build capacities, to provide research, to support your work and your interventions. And we will do our utmost to ensure that upholding the goals of safe, orderly and regular migration are mainstreamed throughout our multidisciplinary work as we look to help countries achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as you are all no doubt aware, putting together a big meeting like this requires quite a lot of work, both here in the meeting room and behind the scenes. Ultimately, the success depends first and foremost on you, our delegates, and I would like to thank each and every one of you, the distinguished delegates, for your lively and engaging participation throughout these days and for having made the long journey in many of your cases to be with us. This has enabled us to hold substantive discussions and develop what I believe actually is a very strong input to the global process. I would particularly like to recognize the contribution of the distinguished panelists for sharing their insights to help facilitate our deliberations. I would also like to thank all the partner agencies for supporting the meeting, namely IOM, ILO, UNDP, UNFPA, UNHCR, UNODC, and UN Women, all of whom have provided vital support in the substance and also in the logistical aspects of this meeting. And finally, I have to thank and recognize the hard work by our very own team of the Social Development Division of ESCAP, led by my colleague Nagesh, in organizing the meeting. I would also like to thank, of course, our interpreters, the editors, the members of the Conference Management Unit who've made this process as smooth as possible. And I would ask that together, if you don't mind, we give this large team a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, let me finish by, in a way, reiterating that the agenda that we have set ourselves is quite a daunting one. The timeline is short, the challenges are quite great. The Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration has the potential to transform the lives of millions of migrants and non-migrants for the benefit of all in the spirit of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Behind all the processes, behind all the numbers are human stories, are people. We have collectively taken the first steps to ensure that the Compact fulfills its potential. I thank you on behalf of ESCAP and wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sahedi. The floor is now open to any distinguished delegate wishing to address the meeting. As there are no delegates wishing to address the meeting, then I will proceed to closure. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we have had 3 fruitful days of productive deliberations and have successfully concluded our work. I am inspired by the depth of commitment to addressing the issues before us, the quality of the discussions, and the wealth of experience and expertise. Indeed, this Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration session has provided us with a unique and timely regional platform to Asia-Pacific priorities on international migration, which will serve as a regional input for the stock-taking meeting in Mexico. On behalf of all members of the Bureau, permit me to reiterate our sincere appreciation for the honor bestowed upon us to serve this meeting session as its Bureau. In particular, we thank all of you for the warm cooperation and goodwill that prevailed, enabling us to conclude our work successfully. My special thanks to my Bureau colleagues and the Vice Chairs for their support and constructive contributions. The hard work of all the Secretariat team members and their excellent servicing of the meeting greatly facilitated our work. Let me also thank the meeting officers as well as the language staff, in particular our interpreters, translators, and editors who worked hard behind the scene to support us. On behalf of the Secretariat, I also wish to remind delegations to please take a few minutes before leaving the meeting to complete the evaluation questionnaire that was distributed earlier. The results will be used to improve future meetings of ESCAP. With this, I declare the Asia-Pacific Regional Preparatory Meeting for the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration as closed. Thank you very much.
Have a safe journey home.